mighty machines. Making mighty machines. Working for you, doing mighty things. They're mighty machines. Lifting and pulling and flying so high. Building a building up to the sky. You can watch them all day and never know why. They're mighty machines. Hear them roar, watch them soar. Sit right down and see. There are stories to enjoy for every girl and boy. Mighty machines, making mighty machines, working for you, doing mighty things. They're mighty machines, working for you, doing mighty things. They're mighty machines.
Casey Jr. is a small tender engine who works mixed traffic services on the Railways of Crotoonia. He's a smart little engine who knows his way around the railway after working on it for many years.
Oh no!
Though he is prone to getting into a few scrapes every now and then. One day, he was delivering a train of fuel and coal to the Crotoonian yards of the Dreamfleet Railway Company, one of the many railway companies that work the country's railways. Big Old Rusty, Dreamfleet's oldest steam engine, was arriving with a load of empties. He had just delivered a load of slates from the quarry all the way up to the docks in Gradinia Bay.
Hey there, C. Junior. How's things?
Pretty good. Just brought over some stuff for your fuel tanks and coal hoppers.
Oh, now that's a relief. You came right in time. We're just a quarter hopper away from being empty.
Good to hear then. Say, where's Tracy?
Tracy, the little shunting engine that worked the yards, who was usually upbeat and cheery, wasn't feeling very well. She'd overworked herself in the hot sun, and, as a result, had overheated her boiler, which was electrically heated instead of using coal or wood to burn.
Oh, sorry, Tracy, but you'll have to go to the works in Colville for repairs. We just can't let you risk your boiler bursting working with all those cars and coaches.
But sir, who's going to take my mail train? The villagers need to get their packages and letters delivered on schedule.
Casey Jr. rolled up to the workman and Tracy. He had an idea.
Hey, sir! What if I took Tracy's mail train tonight?
You, Casey Jr.? Are you sure?
Sure as sure can be, sir. I just have a goods train to take to the docks at Groflin, so I can work her train later tonight.
Okay, if you're sure. I'll let the mail depot supervisor and Miss Ella know.
Workman called Miss Ella about the plan, which she approved, and the same went for the manager of the mail depot. Casey Jr. took his cars to the harbor and headed back to the sheds for a power nap. Nighttime can be very busy for the few engines who have jobs throughout the night. There's passengers to take home past the station in Norfolk, and freight to go to the factories, towns, and big ships at the harbor. The busiest type of train at night in Crotoonia is the mail train. These trains take special coaches and wagons called mail cars, where the mail is loaded on and sorted en route to their destinations, sometimes traveling by air or road. Casey Jr. was soon at the mail depot, where his wagons and loaded packages were waiting. Edward was also there, helping Johnny with the mainline mail trains.
Evening, Casey.
Evening, Edward. How's things?
Not bad. Mainline traffic's been the same for me. I take it you're taking over for Tracy?
Yep, I'm taking her mail cars all the way down to... where exactly am I taking the mail wagons?
I figured you'd ask that. You're to take all the mail from here to Cliffstone Junction, take care of the mail on the Mountain Branch lines, and drop off your train at Gardenia Bay Station to let the other postal vehicles and the Pinewood Island mail engines complete the last little bit of work.
Sure thing. Drop off to Cliffstone Junction. Mail for the Mountain Branch, final stop at the mountains? You sure that's the right place to take them? Because the branch lines have really narrow lanes and really huge cliffs and are really high up in the river.
Calm down, Casey. You're not frightened of the mountains, are you?
Oh, of course not. I go on them all the time. It's the branch lines I'm worried about. Those rickety rails and tight cliffs make me nervous without a clear view.
Well, imagine it's like the main line, and it should be better. Goodbye, Casey Jr. Good luck.
Okay. Thank you.
The men moved quickly to ship the parcels, packages, and letters into Casey Jr.'s mail wagons. They were larger than Tracy's usual wagons, so they could fit a little more into them. Finally, the cars were loaded, and Casey Jr. was on his way. Casey Jr. slowly made his way up the line, a little worried about what would come later on. Soon made his first stop at Cliffstone Junction. Porters and workmen hurried to load and unload the mail for the towns near the stations and beyond the station. Then they set off for the first loop line, which ran from the junction, through the mountain, and up to the town of Rhodoslopia. Casey Jr. soon made it to the first big slope. The track was rather steep, and there was little elbow room in the cliffs that surrounded it. It was tough to roll up the mountain at first, but Casey Jr. wasn't willing to give up just yet.
Alright, give it everything we've got. Let's go. I think. Come on, let's go. Come on. I know.
At last, after much pulling and much straining, he was finally at the top of the hill.
Finally!
Casey Jr. felt much more confident. He didn't feel like slowing down now, imagining himself along the main line as Edward suggested. If only at the worst possible time. Casey, slow down! You're headed straight for me! Rattling rivets! What happened to you, Glazy Jr.?
Sorry, Pete. I didn't know you were coming down the hill. I was going down so fast. It was hard to see you at the bottom.
First time out with a late night mail run, eh? Well, I can't say I was perfect on me first night run, but I did learn a thing or two from me mistakes. You can't be too confident or too underconfident about working in a new way or with a new job. You just have to go in there and do your best, no matter what. That's what I've learned, at least.
Thanks, Pete.
You're welcome, C. Junior. Right, time to get going.
Pete! Where's that crate going?
Oi, what crate?
Oh, the one on your last flatbed.
I still don't know what you're rattling rivets! That crate's supposed to be at the docks! It's a specially ordered load of paving stones for a customer in the UK! The ship's leaving at sunrise!
Let me take it for you. I'm on my way to the docks anyway.
Oh, thank you, Goisey Jr. You're a real saint.
Soon, Casey Jr.'s conductor loaded the crate onto his first mail coach, and quickly Casey Jr. puffed away to finish up the mail run. The docks the crate was heading to was at Rodinia Bay, at the very end of the Crotoonian main line. He knew he had a lot more stops to do, so he put on full steam and got to work as fast as his wheels could let him. He wasted no time getting his other work done. There was some for the manager of Cliffstone Center Quarry, where Speedy, Bill, and Ben worked. A little bit for the manager of the logging camps. A little bit for Rhodoslopia Junction. A little bit for the steelworks in Bluesburg. A little bit for Boston. A bit for the search and rescue team. A little bit for his home in Colville Junction. Until at last he was at Rodinia Bay Junction. The yards were already booming when he got there, and the Pinewood Island mail train and Johnny were waiting for him, ready to depart.
Hey, C. Junior. Where are you heading to?
Delivery for the docks. back in a bit.
Okay, see you later.
And after everything was done, Casey Jr. brought the crate over to the docks ready for shipping. He caught it in good time, too. The ship was completing its final loading procedures, and the crane wasted no time getting it on board. Later that morning, Soeren Featherington, head of operations on the Railways of Crotoonia, sent a message for Big Tim to deliver to Casey Jr. Hey Casey, got a message from Soeren. You seemed to do a good thing last night, bringing that special delivery back to the docks for Pete and sticking to your mail schedule on record time. So much so, he's taking you with him to an important trip to Boston for the weekend. He'll book you tours, a shed, and everything. Isn't that exciting? Casey, you doing okay, buddy? But he didn't get an answer. He was so tired from all the rushing around that he'd fallen fast asleep.
Somebody get this freaking duck away from me!
Livy is a sturdy tank engine in charge of McCrackenton Freight Depot. It's near a small town just near the hills beyond Calville and Foston, and often gets deliveries from all over the railway. But the depot is not as big as others on the railway, which makes her feel very uptight about it. If it's not Livy's way, then it's the highway. One night, Livy was cooling her firebox for the night when Jebediah, the engine who pulled the Calville milk train, eased into the sheds. He was a very kindly engine, but he was rather worn out compared to the other engines. Ugh! Keep your soot off my tanks, old-timer, snapped Livy. I've got an image to keep up with my yard. I'm sorry, Livy, puffed Jebediah, but my chug isn't what it used to be. My rods have been jamming up for the last little bit, so I've had to burn more to puff more. But why are you here now? I'm glad you asked, said Mrs. T-Mark, who ran the depot and was preparing to head home for the night. We've just gotten a contract to store and deliver dairy products from all over the railway beginning tomorrow. Livy was shocked. Her yard a dairy yard? But why? Can't that Cormac keep track of cheese with his silly prawns? I'm sorry, Livy, but we finalized the agreement. But it will keep our yard busy, and it'll open up a lot of opportunities if we do it well. But Livy didn't think so. Her yard had to be the way she wanted it. Next morning, the first load started to crawl in with Jebediah's first train. He brought churns of milk from the Gardenia Bay and Calville dairies. Then Tootle delivered cream from Inkblada Towers Creamery. Then Emily delivered butter and eggs from Cliffstone Farms. And Olwen delivered the biggest load of all, cheeses from the Celgreb Bay Cheese Company. Every cheese you could imagine was packed into vans. Cheddar, mozzarella, feta, Swiss, string, Stilton, and even Wensleydale. The vans and refrigerated cars all packed the yards. Siding after siding seemed to be moving vans out and then vans in. Livy couldn't stand it. My yard should be an industrial space with construction materials, containers, and important things. Not a storage yard for a cheese festival. Did someone say cheese? And the more and more freight came in, the more and more she got tired of it. And she didn't treat poor Jebediah any nicer, especially when his rods finally gave out when parking home at the sheds one night. Oh, gosh darn it. Oh, fantastic, she cracked. Now what are we going to do about the Calville train? Don't fret about it, said Mrs. T-Mark. I'm sure Mrs. Ella will find another engine for the job. Now you'd better find a flat car and get poor Jebediah over to the works. And so she did. But her words flew around in her boiler. Find another engine to do the job. Find another engine to do the job. And that's when Livy made a plan. A firelighter comes every morning to ready the engines for the day. After the firelighter left this morning, Livy put her plan into motion. She rounded up every dairy car in the yard and coupled them all together. Then, with a bit of strain, she began to haul the cars off down the line to Bluesburg West Yard. They've got so many sidings there that little blue pressure cooker won't mind having some extra work to do. But she'd forgotten about Foston. Foston has two main line connections, a passenger line that leads up to the big station and the small commuter station, and a freight line that goes through the goods yard. Livy was hoping she'd be taken onto the passenger line where she usually went with her traffic. But the signalman hadn't known about Livy, and she was kept on the goods line, following a slow freight before her. Oh, bother, she said. Miss T-Mark will be finishing her breakfast and driving to the yards by now. But that was about to be the least of her worries, for there came a sound that rattled through her vents. Oh no, she cried. It's the Sunrise Skyrocket! She tried to go faster, but there were too many cars behind her. She thought she would be okay, but just as the train was halfway across the points, two cars were in pieces. No one had been hurt, and soon Tracy arrived with workmen to help clean up the mess. Miss T-Mark also arrived onto the scene of chaos. Cheese and butter lay all over the track. But worst of all was Livy. She was splattered with cheese all across her side tanks. And as if she didn't make herself look silly enough, two wheels of Stilton were stuck and melting on her two whistles. You're very lucky that only a small part of the deliveries are being delayed thanks to you. But I hope you understand now that there are times when you should talk to us about concerns. But thinking cheese and milk cars make your yard look silly is not one of them. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am. Once you've been cleaned up and mended, you can take care of Jebediah's milk train until he's repaired. And you learn to think of more than what you'd like the yard to be run like. Yes, ma'am.
Welcome to Crotoonian Shoots, the program in which we see the Railways of Crotoonia in all of its raw wonder. Today, we're off to visit the Celgreb City Freight Depot and Carriage Yards.
Tillie the little engine had been working very hard. Ever since her great rescue of the fairy tale arrow, Miss Ella had been assigning her more out-of-the-yard work, which made her very happy indeed. She loves visiting new places and meeting the other engines who help run the railway. One day, Mrs. Ella had an important job for her. We've got some spare parts from the works to go to the mainland and some goods bound for Pinewood Island scheduled for the noon Pinewood goods. I need you to take them to Grodinia Bay so they can be brought to their respective destinations.
Oh, yes, ma'am,
said Tillie excitedly. Grodinia Bay is one of the biggest stations and towns on the Crotonian mainline, and there were lots of friends she knew there, like Scarloey and Reneus, the narrow-gauge engines, and Piper, the steam-electric shunter. She collected the spare parts from the goods shed where Farnsworth was getting oiled up from his morning local run.
Well, if it isn't the little switch engine who's off to haul a real engine's train,
he said dismissively. Now, Farnsworth, said Jason. Wasn't it her who took a train you inadvertently caused to derail? It shut him up instantly. As Tillie backed down on the freight cars, an awkward clanking sound was heard. It was like a pair of exercise weights being bumped together. But outside of the freight cars, nobody else heard it. Tillie soon collected her cars from the goods depot and set off for the junction. But the clanging noise kept ringing out, and the shunters who were fastening cars together in the yard were very worried. As she passed through the cuttings between Colville and Grodinia Bay, the clanking seemed to get louder and louder. Until... clang! One of Tillie's glides got jammed. Now it would be much harder to push her driving wheels along. But Tillie didn't want to stop to let another engine take over.
I shouldn't give up. What will Mrs. Ella say if I told her I'd broken down with a very important train?
So the little engine decided to press on. She passed through a nearby halt where the Greendale rocket was taking on water. As she passed through, there was a small hissing sound that seemed to follow her.
Tillie,
called the rocket.
Did you fill up with water before heading out with the train?
But it was no use. She was next to the brake van by the time her message was finished. Soon, Tillie reached the busy town of Grodinia Bay. Trucks rattled past on the roadways and overpass, construction cranes whizzed about with their work, and there stood the big hill just before the station. Whoop whoop, whistled Henry, who was passing through with an express freight.
Mind the hill today. The sea salt's making it a bit rough.
Tillie was ready for hills, so she fired off her sandboxes and charged at the hill. The freight cars tried to slip on their brakes, but Tillie was sure to beat them and press on. As she took on the final slope, James hurried up with a small vegetable train from Foston. He heard a nasty hissing sound near Tillie when suddenly, pop, a bolt shot out from one of Tillie's pistons.
Rocketing rivets, shouted James. What's gotten into you, Tillie? Don't think I can manage this hill, eh, James? Said Tillie excitedly as she made the final incline. No, I mean there's something wrong inside of your... Bang!
A huge noise rocketed through the station yard.
What was that?
Shouted Station Master Scatterbrain, who'd been in the yards checking over a delivery from the main line.
Robbers? Fireworks? A truck backfiring?
I think you'll find it's a breakdown, said a worried James. Tillie had finally made herself run too much. Her conductor clambered into her cab and examined her controls.
Oh, I knew it, she said. She's clean out of water. Boiler tube explosion seems to be it. You worked yourself hard enough to boil water for the whole town.
Damn pissed and glad too, called a workman.
It's a miracle she made it to the yard safely.
Tillie felt horrible. She felt like she had readied herself for the scrap heap. Later that evening, Mrs. Ella visited the Colville Works, where workmen were busily freeing Tillie's glide. Tillie's wheels shuddered a little bit. She feared the absolute worst. But instead of a, "Tillie, what did you do?" or a, "Tillie, why wasn't the job finished right?" she heard a very worried, "Tillie, are you all right?"
I think so. I'm really sorry about the train this morning.
Oh, never mind the train, said Mrs. Ella. What matters right now is how you feel.
Well, I do hurt a little bit. But I thought the train was a big priority, so I pressed on.
I appreciate hard work from my engines, she said. But I also want to make sure that nobody gets hurt. If you sense that something is wrong, you've got to let someone know. That's just using your stack.
Yes, ma'am. I'll be sure to be more careful next time.
And one more thing, Mrs. Ella said, as she exited the works.
Yes?
Asked Tillie. Get yourself a good night's sleep. And after her little trip up the line, Tillie was sure never to push herself too far again. Really useful engines need their brakes too.
Welcome to Crotonian Shoots, the program in which we see the Railways of Crotoonia in all of its raw wonder.
Hold on to your hard hats, because today we're going to look around Baseline Quarry.
Thomas and Tracy enjoy helping out at the Bluesburg Steelworks. They love visiting their friends Phoebe and Ralph and giving them much-needed help. Ralph has constantly kept busy running the manager about and shifting ladle cars into place, while Phoebe takes on long journeys to Bluesburg West Junction and beyond. But the yard had many orders to fill for the next few weeks, and even the extra 2 engines weren't enough to keep things running. That was when Diesel, Airy, and Bert came in. Diesel was in charge of the docks at Crotoonia Bay, while Airy and Bert had been brought in from the Sodor Ironworks for a period. Together, the engines had a known reputation for pranks and mischief-making around other engines. They arrived one busy morning. Thomas and Tracy were arranging a freight train for Big Tim to bring out when they oiled into the main yard.
Hello, Puffball, said Airy. So the big old steelworks can handle with a teapot on rails. Figured they'd send for some modern diesels to help with the extra workload.
You'd be modern 70 years ago, quipped Ralph. Now, as manager's diesel of the Bluesburg Steelworks, we're gonna need you to...
And a rusty matchbox on wheels for a boss. Boy, you really need proper diesels around here. Bert greasily chirped.
Why, you? All right, said Phoebe coolly. Now that we've gotten to know each other, let's get to work. Diesel, dockyard deliveries. Airy and Bert, you're working the pier. And she confidently went back to the steelwork shed to work. The Diesels did prove to help out a little bit, but many problems soon arose with their presence. They shoved trains into the wrong sidings, took any chance they got to make fun of or play tricks on Ralph and Tracy, and Diesel would bump Thomas or take the right away from him. Altogether, the three engines were gradually getting fed up with the Diesel's trickery. Phoebe, on the other hand, wasn't particularly bothered. No matter what prank she got, she took it all in stride. Thank you for arranging my freight cars, Airy, she said to him after getting bumped with freight cars. I really needed the washdown, Bert, she said when shunted while taking on water. Your brakes need checking, she said when bumped by Diesel. All in all, the freight engine was proving to be very tough to break. And Diesel and his cronies were more determined than ever to push her to the edge. Next morning, Thomas and Phoebe were sent to Celgreb City with a heavy freight train. They were to be transferred to another train heading out for Pennsylvania in the afternoon. Make sure to mind yourselves while we're gone, puffed Phoebe, and mind yourselves if you have to go through Bluesburg West. Huh, said Diesel. We can handle that yard easily. And determined to prove they were capable, he requested that he, Airy, and Bert be coupled to the next train heading out through there.
There's a 12 o'clock express to go to Boston, but you'd better watch out there. It'll be rush hour.
But the Diesels weren't thinking or listening. They were too busy thinking how clever they were to realize what they were getting themselves into. Nor had they been paying attention to the freight cars in the yard.
Who are they to boss us around, punting us like footballs around the yards? This is Phoebe's yard, and Ralph's too. Let's teach them a lesson, boys.
The Diesels were soon on their way with their heavy freight train. Although advised by the conductor to take at the very least a transfer caboose, they chose to take it as a triple header. The Diesels on the other railways have no trouble hauling it all at the front with no van, so why should we worry? But they have forgotten that Diesels on the other railway have special devices to minimize the usage of brake vans and cabooses. Bluesburg West is a very dangerous yard for a careless engine. There's few signals located throughout it, and engines must take care and pay close attention when entering or exiting the yards. Engines must always be prepared to give off 4 short whistles to alert the signalman in the control tower that they are there. But Diesel and the twins hadn't bothered to remember. They just hurried through the tunnel to the junction. The car's chance had come. On! 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 They yelled, and with a mighty shove, the cars took the Diesels by surprise and surged the speeding engines into the junction. The signalmen were shocked and put in a full-on panic, frantically trying to avoid a collision. 2 mainland Diesels nearly hit them at the entrance, they almost hit Callie at an intersection, and Douglas nearly lost his tender. Phew, said Diesel, we're home free now. But they weren't. They hadn't accounted for Alea, a little shunting engine who was pushing a line of freight cars to go to Groffman Harbor. She was entering the main line. Oh no! Screamed Diesel as he shut his brakes hard on. Then, disaster struck. Diesel was on his side next to the crash, dazed, confused, and bruised. Some of Alea's cars had been thrown right off the track, and with Airy and Bert derailed on the switch, no one from the main line could get into the junction. Hang on! Shouted Alea. I'll fetch a crane and send for a few others! By the time the mess was cleared, Phoebe and Thomas were returning from their big run. Phoebe was a little bit entertained from the debacle. Well, 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 3 Diesels too big for their buffers couldn't manage steel cars, eh? Diesel was fuming.
Well, if you treat wagons and engines like that, then it's gonna bite you in the tail lamp, she said firmly. Right, shall we try and haul these cars to the yards? If it helps a bit, said a tired but still willing Thomas. It took some time to tidy up the mess, but soon everything was put right again, and Thomas and Phoebe hauled away the wagons to Foston. What about Diesel, Larry, and Bert? Well, it wasn't long before the Culver Works set them back up and running again, but they don't mess with steel cars anymore, because they know they'll try to bite back. Welcome to Crotonian Shoots, the program in which we see the Railways of Crotoonia in all of its raw wonder. For today's journey, we'll be taking you through the beautiful junction of Great Wolf Forest.
You can have a steam train if you just lay down your tracks.
Hiya, Pacey, how's it going?
Oh, it's going pretty well, TJ. I'm hoping to get my work done as soon as I can, so I have time to get ready to see the new action chugger movie.
Oh, you mean Golden Window?
Yep, I'm going to see it tonight at the Chuggin. Or is it the Chuffin? The Chuggin, Chuff, the outdoor theater.
Oh yeah, we saw that movie last night, didn't we, TJ?
Yeah, you're gonna love it.
Well, please don't give anything away. I've been trying to avoid spoilers all week.
Well, it's an awesome movie. There's this bit where he goes into space and...
Stop! This is a spoiler-free zone!
Well, you at least want to know about the cameos? Flying Scotsman turns up at one point and...
Thanks, but no thanks. I'd rather see it for myself.
And then he gets out this giant sword and...
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
And there's this bit where...
La 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 la! I'm not listening! La 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 la
Okay, we'll stop now.
You promise?
Yep.
Phew.
Oh, and at the end, he wins the big game against the alien, saves all the cartoon characters, and decides to retire from baseball to restart his basketball career.
No! Wait, isn't that just the ending to Space Jam?
Gotcha!
Oh, man, you
Oh,
see a
we're
look on
just
your
messing
face.
with you, Pacey. You know I would never do that to you. I'm just not that type of engine.
Yeah, and you know, I would never do that to you, because I don't want to know what the Fat Controller would do to me in return. He's still holding my favorite video game hostage.
Oh, well, I'm just glad I'm mostly still in the dark about this movie.
Well, we still gotta deliver these tankers. Later, Pacey.
Yeah, bye, Percy. Oh, and don't forget to buy my audiobook.
You mean the one that's just 20 minutes of you going through your made-up words?
Hey, Cal Longardo's Drongbratty and Jerktionary Foam My Own Words is gonna win an award at some point, I just know it. It also helps that I have the cheat bribing the committee. Bye!
Goodbye! Huh, good. Only another 2 hours, and I'll make my way to the theater. I can't wait to see Golden Window.
Oh, that's a great movie. Especially the part at the end where Action Juggle finds out his father's still alive.